follow me home when you see Galilee, then you'll know you're home.
Doug Felick and fish and loaves, not much food would one suppose, but it's fine enough for me. Think I will save it for by the Sea of Galilee. I will hear a man today, wonder what he'll have to say. Miracles happen in Galilee, always to others but never to me. I wonder if the teacher knows how many will come to hear. Well, I'll just bring my fish and loaves, not to stand round here. Loaves and fishes, fish and loaves, not much food, but then who knows? Miracles happen in Galilee, always to others, but never to me.
We're looking at an artwork that's some 1,700 years old. This is the mosaic floor from the second church built on this site where they traditionally remember the multiplication of the loaves and the fishes, the time the Lord fed 5,000 people. The church was built in 300 AD, which contained this floor, and though the church is gone, the floor has come down to us in very good condition, and so it's been kept in this, which is the third church to remember this miracle. Why remember this miracle so specifically? Well, it was a very important one, the only one recorded by all four gospel writers. Now, our location is on the west coast of the Sea of Galilee between Tiberias and Capernaum. We've moved north since last program, and we're heading up toward the north part of the lake. So it's possible that this site, known as Tabcha, was water springs, and that we know, and that the Lord debarked from it when he went away to do this miracle. Really, he went away to get away from the people. This was a time that he really needed rest. He had just heard of the execution of John the Baptist, and this was, I guess, disheartening to him and to all the disciples, and they wanted some peace and quiet. We might call this a retreat. It's a beautiful place where he went. The Golan Heights are in view, and the Sea of Galilee. It's very peaceful. Pilgrims still like to go there to get a little bit away from the crowds. It's the west side of the sea that's populated, and on the east side are more rugged country mountains and so on, so that there are fewer farms and fewer markets, and so it's quiet over there. Today there's a kibbutz, Ramat Galan, where we have put our pilgrims when we come to tour Israel, just to have the serenity of the place, which is what the Lord and his men evidently sought. The gospel says they went to a desert. It doesn't mean a desert like the Sinai, but a deserted place, a place deserted of people. It says in the chapter that the hills were covered with grass, and so we know it really wasn't a desert. The time of the miracle, before Passover. It's evidently the towns were swelled up with the crowds, pilgrims coming from the north to go on to Jerusalem, which was required of them in March or early April to celebrate the spring feasts, Passover, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and the Feast of First Fruits. They still occur, of course, at this time today. And it's a nice time to be here in Galilee because it's replete with wildflowers and buds on the trees. Really lovely, beautiful, a nice climate. So many people stopped here before beginning the more arduous part of the journey to Jerusalem through the hot Jordan River Valley or over the mountains of Samaria, where they would have to be real outdoorsmen to travel. And there they found the remarkable teacher of Galilee, weary but willing to minister to them. He was emotionally disheartened naturally, but the crowds kept on following him because they loved to see the signs, the miracles, the healings. It's not clear whether their faith was something real or that they were thrilled by what he did. But they were faithful to a degree because, after all, they were people, many of them, going to go all the way to Jerusalem for Passover, so certainly they had some belief. But Jesus and his men were simply tired, and they wanted to get away, and Bethsaida, a town some 5 miles across the sea, offered a chance of peace and rest, and I think they debarked from here, and the crowd observed them and saw them get into a boat somewhere near where we are and head across the sea to Bethsaida, and they got excited and they ran overland to see him. And I guess when they came to Magdala, people said, "Where are you going?" And they said, "The Rabbi of Galilee is here. Maybe he'll perform a wonder." And when they came to Gennesaret, the people said, "Where are all of you going?" And when they came to Capernaum, a very busy city, people joined until when they got there, there were 5,000 men, and in addition, some of their wives and children. It must have been a remarkable scene, and we'll go there right after this. Well, when all of those folks arrived here at the field near Bethsaida on the shore, the Lord welcomed them. He was eager to minister, at least when people hungered for truth. This large crowd that had gathered and come, of that crowd, many were very sincere worshipers that wanted to hear him speak. These were the people that were going all the way to Jerusalem for Passover and so on. Undoubtedly, some in the crowd just hoped to see a sign and a wonder and a miracle. But many would sit and listen to him. And teaching was crucial to his ministry. He came here to explain, as it says in Acts 1:3, the things of the kingdom of God. That passage is after his resurrection. He has 40 days with his disciples, and what does he do with those days but teach them? And they became real experts in the Old Testament. Peter was able, at the miracle of Pentecost in Acts 2, to quote the prophet Joel. Philip was able in Acts 8 to witness to the Ethiopian eunuch and to say the scripture of Isaiah 53 when the eunuch said, "Of whom does the prophet speak?" and then witness to him about Jesus. They had to read a lot of Old Testament to be that adept. I would have liked to go to that 40-day Bible school of the Lord's. In any case, this was a very important part of his ministry, to train the disciples as teachers. He was a teacher of teachers. And of course, this gift is very important. In 1 Corinthians 12:28, it's given third among the most vital gifts. Some are apostles, some are prophets, some are teachers. And without being able to teach this word, it's doubtful we can witness effectively. Believers must be able to teach this Bible to the degree it takes to witness, to change people, to make them see truth. And of course, we should understand the fact that they were witnessing out of the Old Testament only. They, of course, didn't have the New Testament as yet, and they had to be expert in how to prove Messiah from the pages of the Old Testament, a skill that we sometimes overlook and in a way have lost since we have the New Testament to share. But it should be known one can prove Messiah perfectly and convincingly from the Old Testament scriptures, as they did. Well, what did Jesus do on this occasion? He was not just a teacher, but also a shepherd, tending the sheep, healing them, feeding them. He was really the perfect pastor-teacher. He saw to their needs and he taught them the word. Well, it says in the scripture, Jesus went up into a mountain and saw the crowd. That expression usually means he came up from the shore where they docked their boat, up the hilly foothills, and there the crowd arriving from the other side. The road goes over there, and they had come overland nearly 10 miles, the crowd getting bigger and bigger and bigger to see him, and they were here when he docked. And when he saw the size of the crowd, Jesus asked Philip, where can we buy bread that these might eat? Well, why did he ask that? The hillside was covered with people, 5,000 men plus their families. It was inconceivable they could buy bread. But John says in verse 6:5, he asked him this to prove him. It's a test for Philip. Philip, first of all, we should say, was a native of Bethsaida and would know where to find a bakery or where to find bread, but that's not really the test. The question on this test is about what Philip could remember of the Old Testament, because when Philip brought Nathanael to Jesus back in the first chapter of John, Philip at that time quoted from Moses and the prophets, and I can quote the scripture. It's John 1:45. Philip findeth Nathanael, and saith unto him, We have found him, of whom Moses in the law and the prophets did write, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. Well, on that occasion, he was witnessing, in a sense, to Nathanael, saying, Look, I found the man who undoubtedly Moses wrote of and the prophets wrote of. And now the Lord asks him specifically, where do we buy bread? Could he remember that Moses did get bread, not for 5,000, but for 2 million slaves in the Exodus, manna from heaven? Could he remember Elisha in 2 Kings 4, who fed 100 men with miraculous bread? Could he remember Elijah of the prophets, who renewed the widow's bread supply on until the drought was over? To make an A+ on the Lord's test, Philip really should have answered, When you are here, Lord, we don't need to buy bread. Well, Philip didn't make an A+ on that test, and none of the disciples had an answer. They evidently conferred among themselves, and the committee decision was to send the crowd away. They were stymied, and Philip, of all people, said 200 denarii worth of bread would not be enough for that crowd. And a denarius from Matthew 22 we can see as the daily wage for a rural worker. In other words, 200 days full pay wouldn't be enough to buy bread for that crowd. Philip could talk about the miraculous one when he was witnessing, but somehow lost his grip here when the pressure was on. In fact, every one of them saw the wedding at Cana, for example, and they lacked the faith, even though the Lord had turned water into wine when it looked as though the wine supply would run out. Why didn't it occur to them that the crowd was larger, but Moses' crowd in the wilderness was enormously bigger than that? They didn't reach for their faith. And in the book of Revelation, it says that a day's wage will be spent for a loaf of bread again, and that's the time in the tribulation when faith will count for a lot, if anybody has it. Well, Andrew reports on the boy's bag, which he carried, and had, of course, the 5 loaves and 2 fishes, but he says in his report, what are they among so many? He doesn't really have to say that. Anybody could see a little boy's lunch or supplies, whatever he was delivering, wouldn't begin to feed the crowd. He seems to be emphasizing to Jesus, don't try it. What's this little supply among all these people? Be sensible, Lord. It reads in a sort of a feeling of discouragement. And that makes the coming miracle all the more emphatic, because the very students of the Messiah seem not to believe there is an answer. Now, the loaves, I should say, are the flat bread kind, and not what we call in the Western world a loaf of bread, but a round circle or a square, very, very flat, not much bread. The fish are the pickled or smoked kind, eaten with this coarse barley bread to give it a little bit of taste to make it palatable. It might be akin to something like rye crisp squares and a little sardines on the side. Not a very good meal, but and not the best kind of bread either. The barley bread was the poor people's bread, not near as nice as eating wheat bread, which is also available in the area, but not what the boy was carrying. In Israel, they have always eaten such fish. When the pilgrims come, they see these smoked and pickled fishes, even for breakfast, and it gives them some problems at first, but it's a wholesome meal. The time when the Lord told them to fish on the right side of the boat in John 21, and they had the big catch, that was a breakfast meal, and the Lord and the disciples enjoyed that very much. Anyway, that's what was on hand. The coarse barley bread, these undistinguished fishes, and not much of it. And Jesus turned to his men and told them to sit the people in groups of 50, in companies, all along the hillside, rather like Moses in Deuteronomy 1 sat the people by groups, by thousands, 500s, hundreds, and 50s. It was a very organized feeding, a miraculous feeding of these people. Is going to be organized like it was in the Exodus. No wonder they wanted to make a king out of Jesus. He appeared to be at least Moses returned. Well, the Lord blessed the food, it says, and I know what blessing he said, because the blessing over bread, as had been said already, why, probably from the Exodus, some 15 centuries. It was the blessing before any meal. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Blessed art thou, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who bringest forth bread from the earth. And it must have seemed appropriate on this occasion as they sat here on the earth among the grasses of the fields and the lilies and hoping for bread to eat. He said that blessing as it said at Passover, and as it was said, I guess, in the wilderness when the manna came down from heaven. I wonder if they expected heaven to open up and bread to come down. In a way, it did. Well, the Lord then passed the food to the disciples. He was standing by the bag, bringing it out, giving it to them. They received it and gave it to the people, and the more they gave out, the more they received, and on, I guess by the hour, until all 5,000 and the family members of them were fed. The little gesture of the Lord taking it and handing it to them and them serving has an application to the ministry of any disciple, including us. The disciples minister to the people. God supplies the miracle. Whatever miracle, healing, it's not really in the hands of the minister. It comes from God. God gives it to him, he gives it to them. And that is the principle of the miracles and of ministry, and it was demonstrated elegantly right there. Now, they were all satisfied. There was leftovers, in fact. This was not a snack or some sacramental meal. This was an adequate supper for everyone. The sacramental meal, for example, at Passover, when we see Jesus and the disciples in the upper room, they dip the sop, they break the bread, they take the wine. But these are appetizers, the bitter herbs, eaten before the main meal. They were poor. They did not really even have a supper. At Passover, there are these appetizer foods and a ceremony that goes with them, with each food tied to the part of the story, the bitter herbs to the slavery, the bone of the lamb to the delivery out of Egypt, the water, the dipping to the Red Sea. We've taught it many times, but what I stress is those are only little bites of food, and that is all that they took in the upper room. But here in this field where there was nothing but one bag brought by a young boy, they all ate supper, and a good one. They were filled, it says, and there were 12 baskets of leftovers. That's rather remarkable. There was only one basket of supplies. And this idea of Jesus telling them to collect the leftovers, don't waste anything, harks back to the original command of God for the lamb at Passover in Egypt, where he said, take a lamb for each household, or if it's a smaller household, share one between two, and so on. You don't waste heavenly resources. Well, the application of the whole lesson, What does this miracle teach? It's a peculiar one. Obviously, it teaches the power of the Messiah and the faith and so on. But the application seems to be that God multiplies resources for those who will seek the Messiah and follow him. That's what happened. The disciples did follow Jesus. They didn't say to begin with, as the people were arriving, oh, let's get out of here. We came to take a rest. There's an enormous hillside. The road is right up there. The people are going to come and come and come, and we'll be stuck again. We'll be working tonight, and we wanted to rest tonight. God multiplied their resources because they really did follow him. They did not object. They did what he said. They voted to send the crowd away because they could see no solution, but they didn't really do that. They just said it to him, and what did he think? We might get discouraged and take the rest of the night off. Actually, they didn't. Even though they didn't see the miracle coming, they stayed at their post, and therefore they are those who seek Messiah and follow him, and therefore God multiplied their resources. But, and it's an important but, this is not the prosperity doctrine which it is often used as a proof text of. God did not prosper these people. He gave them one adequate supper. They did not get rich. They did not get wheat bread. They ate the barley bread. They didn't prosper on this. Messiah didn't make them wealthy. He merely met their need. It was adequate for the moment. They would be hungry again, no question. By the next meal, they would be hungry, and when they were home, if they had gone to bed, this apparently was a supper, they would get up in the morning hungry for breakfast. But they'd tell their family, what a meal we had last night with the Galilean rabbi. The teacher from Nazareth fed us and fed us all, and there were people as far as the eye could see, and the bread and the fish still came. But they would say it wasn't a rich meal, but it sure was enough. They would say we couldn't really even finish and kept tossing crusts of bread into baskets. Well, they would be hungry again physically, but spiritually they really were filled because of the stray remark in the crowd, such as in John 6:14, where they say, surely this is the one of whom Moses wrote. People in the crowd could very well see it was the teacher who was bringing the bread and bringing the bread on and on and on. It was not a big basket. It was the power of the rabbi. And so they thought he was Moses or like Moses. And it swelled up to such degree that they wanted to make him a king. This happened time and again in Galilee. They were thinking like people in an earthly monarchy, earthbound, oppressed by the Romans. Could they find a strong king to overthrow Caesar and get him out of the land and return it to its former glory? He rejected this. This wasn't real belief. This was simply faith based on a man who could produce food for a regiment or a division of soldiers from a bag. This would be good. He could heal so the wounded would be taken care of. He could feed so the army wouldn't even have to carry supplies. Why, they could bring this carpenter's son and he would feed them wherever they were as long as they wanted, whatever, how much they wanted. Jesus didn't respond at all. He didn't say one word. Undoubtedly, they stood up and said, Melech HaOlam, the king of the universe, whatever. They had said those words in the blessing. They could have shouted it back at him. He didn't listen. It says he simply went up into the mountain. Up from the sea, you can see the ground rises. It goes up, and he would cross the road and disappear into the mountain in his way. He could always leave a company of people without notice, and that's what he did on this occasion. He was not impressed. They wanted a kingdom of power, of splendor. We're going to talk about it when we describe the Sermon on the Mount, which is very near here up on the mountains there. They missed the kingdom he was offering and wanted another kind. They wanted the glory of Rome, and they missed the kingdom of handmaids and servants, where the poor in spirit would be glorified, where the humble would be honored, where the meek would inherit the earth. He wouldn't be king because he could do a miracle. He wouldn't be king because they were thrilled by the miracle, but he will be king because we believe and are waiting for him. And when enough are real members of the kingdom who are not surprised by miracles, then the king will come. At the top of the show, back in the dramatics, you saw a little boy walking along. He's an Israeli boy. If he sang for you, it would be in Hebrew, but the voice you heard was a voiceover by my son, Aaron, 9 years old with a beautiful voice, and I think he deserves some credit. Sings better than his father. If you want to see other little boys in Israel, we take tours there, and be glad to have you come along. I'm not going to do a big tour plug. We have spots from time to time, but know that we're now taking tours in every season. And there's always one going to leave. And if you'll send your name to our office, we'll see that you get each brochure as we pull the tours together. Sha'alu Shalom Yerushalayim. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem.